A GMA exclusive about a cold case mystery that became an obsession for two retired policemen. It began after dozens of college students all across the country disappeared, only to be found dead, all of them supposedly accidentally drowning after a night on the town. Then an investigative reporter in Minnesota linked the murder of a local student to dozens of deaths coast to coast. That reporter, Christy Peel of ABC station in Minneapolis, KSTP, is here with more. Good morning, Christy.
Good morning. Thanks, Robin. Chris Jenkins was a popular college student who simply vanished. 4 months later, he was found dead. First, Minneapolis police thought Chris Jenkins was just a drunk college kid who accidentally fell into the Mississippi River. Then, they said he was murdered. That finding was the turning point in an investigation that now calls into question the cause of death in more than 40 cases. Call it a mystery or a sick trademark of the perfect crime. At least 40 men over 11 years. Their cause of death, drowning. All blamed on a drunken accident, except one.
You should let Grandpa take control.
I know. Chris was abducted in a cargo van. He was driven around Minneapolis for hours and tortured.
The death of Chris Jenkins in Minneapolis is the only one where the cause of death was changed from undetermined drowning to homicide. Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte are the retired cops who say they've discovered a link between Jenkins' death and the drownings of at least 40 other men in 25 cities in 11 different states. This all started in New York City 11 years ago. That's when then Sergeant Kevin Gannon made a promise to the parents of the young man he found right here.
We knew it wasn't suicide, and it was just, one of those things where he walked out and then was never seen again.
Jackie and Pat McNeil's oldest son, Patrick, was last seen in a New York City bar. His body found 50 days later.
It's something you learn to live with. You learn to live with a broken heart.
It is almost a perfect crime.
Perfect, they say, because the water washes away physical evidence and there are never witnesses. Most of the men are last seen by friends leaving a bar or college party. Local police departments have investigated. Even the FBI took a look at the drownings. In every case, except Jenkins, law enforcement ruled the deaths drunken accidents.
It can't be a coincidence or coincidences.
While most local investigations focused on where a body was recovered, Gannon and Duarte wanted to know where the body went in. If they could figure out that location, the detectives believed they'd find their crime scene. In city after city, at that crucial spot, they say they'd find this symbol, a smiley face. They found one in Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Indiana, and in Iowa. They all look different, but the detectives are convinced it's the killer's sick signature. In Michigan, near a drowning, the detectives discovered graffiti they believed was written by the killers, but were puzzled by a word they hadn't seen before.
We found Sinsinua, which to us was very suspicious at the time.
The detectives found it again, hundreds of miles away. They were in Iowa, investigating the drowning of 24-year-old Matt Krzyzewski. Bloodhounds tracked his scent to an intersection near the Mississippi River. The detectives believe that is the location where the killer slid Krzyzewski in the water. It's Sinsinua Avenue.
And we believe they were specifically leaving a clue for us or anybody who was paying attention to these drowning cases that the cases were ultimately linked.
The people that murdered Chris have murdered before him, and they've also murdered people after him. And those people are still at large.
And joining us now is Anthony Duarte and Kevin Gannon, the two retired NYPD detectives who, along with Christy, who brought us this story, are on the trail of the serial killers. Christy, in Minneapolis, Chris Jenkins' death was ruled an accident. So what made you dig deeper?
A lot of things just didn't make sense, and Chris Jenkins' parents, Steve and Jan Jenkins, really have been fighting this entire time and said, you know what, our son would not commit suicide. He would not just jump over a bridge into the Mississippi, and they were the ones that continued to fight.
A lot of people, when seeing this, when we're talking about this, they were wondering, have these victims been women? Would it be different? And the investigation into it would have been different.
That's something a lot of people have talked about, and absolutely, I think it would have. I think that if we would not be to 40 and be now talking about this case, I think this would have been a national story many years ago.
Kevin, we are at 40 now. What is the common link? What makes you think they're related?
Well, besides the fact that we have different evidence that we've went to the scenes, when we first started, You know, most of the cases are very suspicious with drowning cases. They're very difficult to solve. We're not here to knock law enforcement. They did basically an excellent job. They have no trauma in the body. It wasn't suspicious to them, as it wasn't in my 3 cases in New York initially back in 1997. But when the pieces didn't start fitting, we had to look at something else. And Anthony and I then started to find out what was going on. And what we tried to do is find out where the victims would have entered into the water, which would give us a better perspective of what possibly happened to them.
What possibly happened to them, that's what many people want to know now. And, I mean, how did you know? How did you know? How did you put the pieces together when so many people apparently couldn't?
We looked at the totality of the cases. We started with the big number and worked down, whereas the law enforcement looked at each case individually, whatever jurisdiction it was, and we made sure we secured the scene where we feel they went in the water, not where they were just found.
And gentlemen, do you think one killer, more than one killers perhaps?
More than one.
What makes you think that?
Only because there's such a wide range of states that the killings are through, all these drownings, besides the fact that we have multiple victims on the same night. So unless you can dispel the fact that that one of the cases, drownings, were not connected, then there's no way that the same perpetrator could be in 2 different locations at the same time, separated by like 400 to 600 miles.
Anthony, what possibly could be the motive?
Well, that's something that we really can't get into detail right now because we're hoping for prosecution still.
Some people want to know why go public now? Why are you bringing this information to the forefront now? I know you're not revealing a lot of information, but why go public?
Because right now, really, we're out of finances, and we really can't do any more on the cases. In fact, we looked at 89 cases in totality. We knocked out 30 right away, and there was 19 cases that we haven't even done yet. And out of those 19, they look like at least 10 to 15 of those could be connected. But we got 40, and we figured at this point, from the information that we have at the scenes, the fact that this same pieces of evidence keep showing up over and over again at the spots where we determined through our investigative skills that the bodies entered the water. At that point, we said we have to go forward to at least alert the public, the families, and to protect their children.
To protect the children. So who should really, because many of them they're male,
right.
College students?
Correct.
Athletic?
Yes.
What else should we, people should be aware of, and so they can be a little more diligent?
High grade point averages.
Right.
Very high.
And they somehow get separated. They're alone, and they get separated from their friends, and that's when this happens. That's when they disappear.
You're going to stay on top of this?
Absolutely.
All right. Christy Peel, thank you so much. Kevin, Anthony,
Thank
really
you,
appreciate you bringing this to the forefront. Absolutely. And you can find more on our website at abcnews.com.
In a flash, be the first to know what's coming up on Good Morning America tomorrow with the GMA Daily Flash email. All the great insider details you want to know from GMA. Go to abcnews.com, click the GMA page, and sign up for the Daily Flash. And you can even enter to win the weekly GMA Flash gift bag giveaway. Sign up now.